Hey, this is Pamela Riemenschneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. We're both back in the office, hanging out, but next week I will be in Canada for the Canadian Produce Marketing Association's annual convention in Toronto. So I'm looking forward to that, and I will be there for the Week in Review live from Toronto next week.
Hopefully we can get this going internationally and it works.
You know what? I mean, the internet is working a lot better nowadays. And I'm sure the convention center will have decent internet, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I've been around Austin quite a bit lately, and I got two different things. I was back at the Capitol. Texas International Produce Association had another event, gave away 16,000 pounds of produce. And after the last one a couple of weeks ago, I decided to take my big brawny son to help me out. I needed someone
So
else
how
to
did that
lift
go?
those.
Was that a great learning experience compared to an eighth grade public school setting?
You know what? His school is pretty great, but I think for him, seeing how laws are made, because that's really what's going on behind the scenes here, and talking to the growers and overhearing these conversations of, well, yeah, we were able to have some meetings with these lawmakers and draw attention to some bills. And even some of them were talking about having been able to flip a vote on an issue regarding Texas produce in schools. That was all really interesting for him. But what he wanted when we were leaving was a bag of limes, because he wanted to go home and make some limeade, because he'd been lugging around boxes of produce all day. And at the end, all we had left was tomatillos, limes, and jalapenos. And I was like, look at this, son, we're gonna make some salsa. So he had a good time, and I think learned quite a bit about industry advocacy and how laws are made.
So he learned that giving stuff to politicians helps your case.
Yeah, he did. When we went into the Capitol to use the restroom, he gave the side eye to this guy in a suit who was carrying a pretty flashy Louis Vuitton suitcase. And I was like, yeah, that's probably not a lawmaker. That's probably a lobbyist. And he's like, what's a lobbyist? And I'm like, oh man, we're not going to go down that
Well,
path
you
right
could have
now.
said that was us today.
Yeah, right. Only we were more boots and handing out free produce than Louis Vuitton handbags.
It was slightly different, but on the same scale.
Right.
So
um
your local grocer's in the news too, with competing with Bucky's, that sounds like.
you know it, there's no competition for Bucky's. And even on LinkedIn, I saw a post about it, and somebody's like, oh, so they're trying to go with a Wawa like approach. And I was like, no. Okay, first of all, this is HEB, and HEB does everything HEB's way. And so it's not quite Bucky's. And actually the funny thing is that store that's in question that just opened up with a new, I think it was called Fresh Bites, convenience store concept. I drove past it going to the in-laws on Easter, and I was like, oh, look at that, I wonder when that's open, because it wasn't even close. And apparently they hurry up and finished, because it opened this week. It looks like it's got a taco stand and a bunch of fresh produce, and even HEB's pretty famous for their sushi, because all of it is made in-house at every store. So I'm gonna go check it out. And I think it's really interesting to see that HEB has had like fuel centers, but all they ever had was like soda and Gatorade. They didn't really have somewhere that you could go in. It reminds me of Hy-Vee has that fresh format that's their convenience store, and I've been into it. And maybe at first it had a lot of produce, but when we went into one in Columbia, Missouri this summer, there really wasn't much there except for gas station snacks. So I'm going to keep an eye on this HEB format to see that if it actually stays fresh, or if it just becomes like a convenience store with a taco stand.
Yeah, I think those Hy-Vee stores are more prevalent in Iowa rather than in Missouri. But yeah, the convenience store as a meal solutions center, including fresh produce, I think that is a really good chance, because you're right about Hy-Vee is kind of an interesting comp, because they do a lot of fresh prepared sushi, for example. It's the best cheap sushi that we buy.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to see what kind of meal solution, fresh cut, and HEB, when I just did a store check there, with John Pandle when we were up there for Viva Fresh in Dallas at the Plano store, and they have taken out all of their fresh prepared foods that you think of as traditional grocery store fresh prepared foods. There's no fried chicken counter. There's no hot bar with macaroni and cheese and things like that anymore. It's all meal simple, take and bake solution kind of things, and it's all different kinds of formats. And then there's like a barbecue restaurant. So HEB's got a restaurant concept, but not that hot bar concept. And that's not what this convenience store looks like. This convenience store looks like it has the restaurant and then it has the takeaway food. And those are kind of seems like winners for what HEB wants to own. Bucky's, on the other hand, Bucky's is like and it's starting to really expand rapidly across the US. I believe there's one going in maybe at in the Ozarks and then in St. Louis. When you first experience a Bucky's, you will understand. Speaking of John, he sent me a text from a show he must be at where they're talking about Bucky's, and they're encouraging people to stay 30 to 45 minutes at a gas station on the highway to shop around and buy stuff. And I mean, we're talking about kitchen gadgets and swim trunks with Bucky Beaver on them and the amazing banana pudding and cantaloupe that never disappoints. So it's if you've never been to a Bucky's, you have to go to understand what it's like. And Wawa's not even close.
Road trippers to take that much time. I try not to spend that much time at a grocery store when I'm shopping.
Right. You try not to. You try to just keep getting going. And when you stop at Bucky's, you're going to be there for a while. I've got it down to a science. I'm in and out in 15 minutes. But most people, I don't think they could handle it.
Well, we had one other story that I think we ought to talk about, and it's an interesting partnership. Frutura is a produce company that basically owns Deka and Hackett, which is a produce packer and distributor of a number of fruits, but mainly citrus and grapes. And they signed an agreement with Coca Cola. So you're not going to see Coke branded oranges, but you are going to see Simply Select branded fresh citrus in grocery stores this summer and Minute Maid branded grapes. And we ran the release, but I've since talked to David Krause, who's president of Frutura, just about kind of why they did this, why this is the right time. A big part of it comes down to how hard it is for produce companies to create a consumer type brand. Even if they're not going to advertise it as a consumer brand, they still want it as a consumer brand at the retail level. And something like this is just so much of a lower barrier to entry. We've seen a lot of this co-branded in the grocery store with various well-known consumer labels, whether it's movies or drinks or stuff like this. So, of course the market will decide, but Frutura is investing heavily in it, so they believe that this will work, and so does the Coca-Cola company. And there aren't a whole lot bigger marketers in the world than that.
Well, and the elephant in the room is that David Krause is a guy who knows a little bit about branding citrus, having come from the Wonderful Company and the Cuties to Halo branding adventure that we've seen come through there. And that is also the other elephant in the room, is that it takes big dollars to be able to do a consumer brand. And most growers are not able to tackle something like this. Do they want to actually have a consumer brand? A lot of them do. And I've stuck my neck out in a lot of conversations, especially in town halls and things like that, coming from the retail side of it, when retailers are starting to brand this. So who owns the branding of fresh produce? Like you said, the market, I guess, is going to decide on that. There's so many moving parts to this on whether the grower shipper community can handle this or whether the retail community handles this. And overall, we just have to think about what's going to sell more produce to people and get people to eat more produce. And I don't think anyone has the answer for that.
Well, one thing he did say is those labels will be on their premium quality. And so, I mean, every produce shipper has their highest grade and then lower grades that still sell fine. And, you probably don't I don't know, how often are you giving your premium quality to retailers to brand and their private label? So, I mean,
It
that's,
depends on the retail's proposition,
it
because I know
does.
the HEB, my local retailer,
Yeah,
puts the primo stuff in their brand.
you're right. If they're willing to pay for it, that's
Right.
true. If it leads to more stratification in a produce department, that can be a good thing.
It can be a good thing. It can be a whole mess. We're going to have to sit back with some popcorn and watch, because this is, there are so many big brands who have come and gone. There are big brands out there that we have to remember, it's a conglomeration of growers. Driscoll's, for example, is one of the largest brands in the produce department, and it's more than 400 growers. It's not just one grower. So that there's a lot of moving parts. And I know that a lot of marketing organizations are working with grower shippers to establish their brand, establish that recognizability, and that's a great thing for produce to be able to tell its story. So is the story going to get lost in Minute Maid grapes? I don't know. How are they going to maintain the story of fresh produce? We're going to have to see.
High quality always speaks for itself.
Yep. Well, I mean, still gonna have to see. All right. Well, that's it for this week's Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up.